What's up, VC? It's Steve again, Harmless Rebel, and it's time for another vinyl update. This time we're going to tackle some doom metal. I don't think I've done a doom update, and if I have, it's been a long time since. But over the last 3 or 4 months, I've picked up a few really good doom metal albums. Just kind of wanted to share a few of these bands. A couple of these bands I'm sure most of you are familiar with, but there's a couple that I'm sure most of you have never heard of before, so I definitely want to share those with you. So let's just jump in with the band that's gotten really popular over the last few years. It's probably one of the bigger names in doom metal, probably for the better part of the last decade, really. But that band is going to be Electric Wizard. And this is actually their second album, Come My Fanatics. This one is a 2011 repress, I believe. Let's see. Let me double check that real quick. Yeah, this is the 2011 repress of their 97 album, which was their second album. I don't actually like this one as much as their most recent album. That was the album that really got me into Electric Wizard. Last year they did a Record Store Day release of Time to Die, and I really dug that album. This one is still really good doom metal. It's just not nearly as good. The band is not as was not as solid back in 2000. What was it? What did I say? 2000? Or I'm sorry, 97. As they are now, you know. And obviously, after playing together after being a band for 20 years, you definitely hear that growth. But this one is on black vinyl. Yeah, this is black vinyl. Got custom labels. This one is a gatefold. Show this one. So you got the inner sleeve, front cover, and the now famous Electric Wizard logo there. Still a good album, definitely worth having in your collection if you're a doom metal fan, but again, their last album for sure, and definitely their last few albums have definitely, I think, are a lot better than this one, but that's still a good album. Next up, this is a band that Scott Waters turned me on to, and a band that I've really grown to dig over the last couple of years. It's actually what we're listening to right now. This is, we're listening to Empyrean Rose, which is a split album between My Silent Wake and Pylon, which are, this was put out by Rox Records in 2013. Pylon is a Rox Records band. And then My Silent Wake is distributed through Trog's, is it Troglodyte? I can't remember the name of his label off the top of my head, but it's distributed by Trog's label. And I'll put some links to where you can get albums from both of these bands. But this is Preservation, Restoration, and Reconstruction. And this was a little bit different sound for them. This is actually, it's doom, but it's kind of it's an acoustic album, so it's kind of doom mixed with, I almost want to say folk music. It sounds like a weird mix, but it is really cool, and definitely worth checking out. I will say I prefer their electric albums, more like what we're listening to in the background, but still definitely worth checking out and worth having in the collection. And speaking of the other band on this split, a limited run was done of this album, let's see, in 2012. And Rox Records ran across a couple of copies, so I jumped on this one. This is number 55 out of 300, but this is Pylon's album. What is it called? The Harrowing of Hell. Really cool album. The real standout of this album is actually a cover song. They do a cover song of Paranoid on here. that's just absolutely amazing. I really, really dug it. Great album beginning to end, though. Go ahead and pull this bad boy out. And this one is on a translucent blue vinyl. I don't know how well you can see the custom. Yeah, they're hard to see there. But the custom labels. This too is a gatefold. Got a shot of the band and the lyrics in there. Really nice cover. And there we go, got the back cover. Next up, this is a band that I had heard of. I wasn't super familiar with them though. I had heard I know I had heard one of their songs and kind of dug it, and when I ran across this, I went ahead and grabbed it. This is a I don't remember if this was their second or third album, but this was initially released in the early 2000s. This is a 2014 repress. This is Catharsis from Yob, and this is really killer doom. This is on Relapse. I think they're on Southern Lord now, if I remember correctly. And I think Southern Lord is going back and reissuing some of their older albums. But this album was killer. I was really blown away by this. And this is the album that kind of... I've been listening to buying these albums over the last few months has really kind of got me listening to Doom again. And this was kind of the album that kick-started that for me. And I've just been on this Doom kick for the last couple of months. But look at that album cover there. You got the back. Again, this too is a gatefold. This one has amazing looking vinyl though. This looks really, really cool. Look at that. Green with purple and different shades of lighter green splatter vinyl. And then you've got the custom center label there. Really good album. If you haven't heard Yob, I definitely recommend checking them out. And then last up is a local Georgia band. This band is from Athens, Georgia. They initially came out in the early 90s. I want to say like 92. And then in 96, they folded up shop. People just weren't buying their album. There was no real interest in them. And I think part of that was just, in the later 90s, Doom wasn't as big. There were bands like Crowbar that were more sludge metal that were kind of holding it down. But it seems like the revival really started in the early 2000s with bands like Electric Wizard and Yob. But in the early 2000s, people started buying their albums, and major labels started reissuing their early 90s, their early to mid 90s albums. And based on that popularity from those reissues, they got back together in 2006 and started making albums again. And this is their most recent one. When was this? I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Of course, there's no date on it. But this is Harvey Milk. I love the album art for this. It doesn't say anything on it. It doesn't tell you who it is. Just a kind of a really haunting picture from there in Athens. A Small Turn of Human Kindness is the name of the album. It's the inner sleeve there with the lyrics. But I really dug this. And I was one of those people that I had never heard of this band. I was initially kind of intrigued by the artwork. And then I looked it up and saw it was a doom metal band. So I went ahead and grabbed it. I had never heard of them. And then you've got a gray with, I guess, black splatter. But killer album, and I definitely one that I recommend. I actually ended up buying this one on CD as well. The same store had copies of both. And then a couple weeks later, I went back to the same store, and they had this album by the same band. Now, I don't know why. If you're familiar with Harvey Milk, he was the, I don't know if he was the first gay politician, but he was a gay politician in the, I want to say the early 70s. I could be wrong about that. he was murdered by another Democratic representative, or a Democratic politician. I'm not sure if he was a representative. And the story behind it's pretty crazy. It had nothing to do. He kind of became a gay martyr, and it had nothing to do with him being gay. His murder. He was blocking another politician from getting their position back after they stepped down, and he and I believe 2 other politicians were murdered by this guy. Excuse me, my allergies are really bad today. But I can't find any information why they chose the name Harvey Milk. But Harvey Milk, the murder case, is where the Twinkie defense came from. And the Twinkie defense is not what people think it is. The guy didn't claim that he had ate too many Twinkies and that's why he killed him. It was all about diet, and it just became known that over time. Regardless, we've got Harvey Milk, the singles. This is one of those albums that kind of brought them back. This was released in 2003. So the band had already been broken up for a number of years, but here's your back cover. And I was really surprised to hear this because only half of this album is doom metal, and this is the album that kind of got me looking at the band to try to figure out what I was hearing. And this one is also, let's see, this album is on translucent blue vinyl. They've got your custom center labels. But this is the album that got me looking at their history because the earlier songs aren't doom metal. They're more like experimental early 90s noise rock, which, again, I wasn't expecting. And it turns out they started out with their first album as a noise rock band, and by their second album they were starting to experiment with doom and mixing it with noise, and then by their third album they were pretty much a straight up doom metal band. Really good stuff though. If you like doom metal, again, check out Harvey Milk. More so this one just because it's straight up doom, but this is actually a really interesting album. And though I'm not generally a noise rock fan, the slower, more Melvins-like riffs kind of make this cool. So this is worth checking out as well. But and then here you go again. That's My Silent Wake playing in the background. But that's it, guys. A little bit of doom metal I've picked up over the last few months. I'll go ahead and bring you another update pretty soon here. I've actually probably got 4 or 5 videos worth of vinyl to show. I haven't actually been buying much vinyl. I'm just so far behind on updates that I've got quite a lot to show. So that's it, VC. I hope you dug it. Leave comments down below. Tell me what you think of these bands if you're familiar with them. If you're not, check them out and tell me what you think of what you hear. Take care, VC. I'll talk to you soon.